Good morning, everyone. This is, and you are welcome to, meeting number 535. It's Tuesday, June 25th, 2024, and we're at the North Queensbury Firehouse in Uptown Queensbury. Meeting quorum. Do we have a quorum, Carol?
Yes, we do.
We do. Thank you. This morning, it's really enjoyable to introduce our four new commissioners, Michelle Jebb and Walt Lender, Jeff Sapieri, Tom Jarrett. You may know some of them, now you know all of them. I've already told them that it's too late for them to run without being caught before they get to the parking lot. It's a welcome addition. As you know, we have struggled for a few years with maintaining a quorum with some folks missing and passing away and changing jobs and things like that. So we're pleased to be back to a full quorum. We welcome you folks, and we welcome your participation. No question that you ask is the wrong question. You may get a smart aleck answer or something, but don't let that deter you. Having said that, we'll now go for approval of the meeting minutes for May of 2024. Moved. Second? Second made. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Hearing no nays, that's carried.
Mr. Chairman,
yes?
I'm going to abstain from that voting.
Because you weren't
I was
aware
not
of
a
that.
member at that time.
Very good. One abstention, and do the rest of you new members want to abstain because of your absence of the last meeting? We'll put it down. Next item is approval of fiscal actions report for May 24. Motion?
Move to approve.
Motion?
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none. It's carried. Moving along. Item 4, presentation, assemble project. That stands for something, I know it does. And Dave, you want to introduce Dr. Farrell on that?
I do, yeah. So Dr. Jeremy Farrell, right here in the snappy blue jacket, is here to talk to us about a project that he cleverly named Assemble, which is basically culminating years, really decades of scientific study up at Darren Freshwater Institute, which is a subsidiary of Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. So we've been working with them, or really they've been doing all the work, to kind of take all of their past studies and kind of provide some high-level overview to the commission so we can kind of make sure that we're coupling science and management. So thank you, Jeremy, for coming today and talking to our boards.
Thanks for the invitation. I don't know how to do this. Do I talk to the board?
I think we're going to have you over there if that's okay,
that's
Jeremy?
great. Yeah.
Yep.
So good morning, I think still. I'm Jeremy Farrell. I'm the person who's here. But this is the culmination of decades and decades of careers of research. So I'm going to take some credit here, but quite frankly, I don't deserve it. A lot of people that aren't here deserve a lot of credit. My co-authors are Sandra Deerswicki-Bauer and Kevin Rose. The acronym is Amalgamating the Scientific Studies to Ensure the Management and Beauty of Lake Environment. We've been doing a lot of studies on Lake George since 1967, even before, and we've been trying to make really good scientific understanding of the lake, and there's a lot of things that are management-based that could really affect change on the policy side. And so it seems like a great idea to take all these scientific studies and make a quick little, not quick, but like a thoughtful presentation out of it. And maybe I'll be able to go to the next slide. We'll see. All right. So we broke it up into 5 different categories. Our first one is water quality and water clarity. And within that, we've been doing since 1980 this collection of data for the purposes of understanding water quality in the lake. This was what the 30-year report was on back about a decade ago now. So it's really 44 years of data at this point. And we've noticed some very clear signals in the data. Sodium chloride has been increasing about 3 times the amount that was there. Chlorophyll A concentrations increased. Sulfate, that's acid rain, has decreased. Surface water temperatures, we're seeing signals of climate change. More on that later. We've got some deep water oxygen concerns. There's some background stuff with this. As the amount of oxygen goes down, the release of phosphorus in the sediments potentially comes out depending on certain conditions. And we've noticed this north-south gradient as well. This is a lot of data that you're about to be jumping through. You're welcome to interrupt me at any point and ask any questions. I don't know if that's true. Is that true? Okay. But I'm going to fly through these like careers worth of work in one slide. Okay. Jefferson Project. This is a big undertaking between RPI, Darren Freshwater Institute, International Business Machines, IBM, and now the LGA, formerly the Fund for Lake George. They've been doing a lot of data collection and a lot of publishing of really good data. They're all over the watershed. They've got their vertical profilers across the lake. They've got stream stations that you might not see, but they're in the watershed constantly monitoring the stream flow. They've got acoustic Doppler current profilers that they shoot sound down into the water. They can say, hey, how fast is the water going and in what direction? Weather stations abound, tributary stations. And all of that data comes to one centralized location where we can parse and manipulate the data to understand the trends in the information. It is not trivial to take in all of that information and then be able to understand it. So that's the Jefferson Project. Obviously deserves more attention than what can be given in a single slide. Okay, that's it for the Jefferson Project for now. We'll go on to our watershed studies. We're also up in the watershed. We have those tributary stations that we just talked about with the Jefferson Project. Historically, we've been measuring streams for decades at this point. The first real one happened in 1972 by Foos et al. At the New York State Department of Health, where he was measuring stream water chemistry and flow at a bunch of different locations. We still have that data and use it as the baseline to go forward from there. Obviously we have our tributary monitoring stations where we are monitoring the flow with the Jefferson Project. Also we have, not yet published, but information that we've been working on gathering. Every place we've identified where water flows underneath the road, we go and collect a sample for chemistry, and we do what we call a benthotorch reading. This is like a sonde. You put it on a rock and it measures the amount of chlorophyll on that rock and then parses it out into the different types of organisms that can live there. Really wonderful information can be gotten from that. We've also done this excitation emission matrix survey. This we just recently published, I think this last spring, where we go and we collect a bit of water and then we try to identify what the source of that water was. Be it lake, hey great, we identified where the lake samples came from the lake. Undisturbed watersheds, we've got plenty of those. Agriculture, only a couple of them. Wastewater treatment, we're identifying them down in the South Basin. Be interesting to follow this study up as that wastewater gets even more and more clean. We're seeing some good things happening there with the update of the wastewater treatment plant. Any questions on water quality, water clarity before I jump into the next thing? It's really disingenuous to just gloss over this, but
Jeremy, what
yes.
about that agriculture?
So agriculture just showed up at those two places, and it kind of makes sense. Up on the west side of the lake.
There's a lot of green circles there.
Those are the blue ones, the light blue ones. They just show up there.
Oh, I see. Okay.
The green ones are the undeveloped.
Okay.
And so I'll just jump into it because you asked the question and it's just so fun. Effectively, you get this like matrix of information. You scan and excite the emissions on a spectrometer, and then you compare that against a big library of other people who have done this. And what's nice is it's showing up with what we think where it should be, and it's consistent with that.
I see. I get it now. I just didn't see the fine change in color for 2 hues.
It's tough on a small
I see it
spot.
now, though.
Yeah, Chris.
Are you gonna, is there any more, because I just had a question, like north basin and south basin. Is there something later on comparing that, or just a general trend?
Certainly, we could, wait, in the streams or in, what are we talking about?
Just when you were saying water quality, and just, I was just wondering that last.
Maybe here, I just kind
Right,
of...
north-south gradient.
Yeah, so we do see very strong, I mean, of course you know this, a very strong relationship in chlorophyll A. One thing that I'd like, you only get the highlights here. I also have been doing some extra work where we've taken a sonde and dragged it the entire length of the lake at 4 miles an hour so that we can get that really subtle gradient, and it shows up beautifully in the data.
Thank you.
And also, that shows up in conductivity, which would be salt, and a bunch of other ways. Okay. I love the questions, but I don't want to keep you here all day either. Okay, climate change. We are seeing the signal of climate change in our lake and in our streams. So some of the ways that we parse this out is by looking at the effect that it's had on precipitation. We've seen bigger storms, changing the phenology, the timing of storms, and having pretty big impacts. That's Lake Avenue Beach during Hurricane Irene. Huge storms come through our area now, and we've got some data that's not coming to the top of my head on the percentage of bigger storms or whatever, but it will be in the report. The impacts of the increasing precipitation is, hey, there's a lot of stuff in that water. Obviously, that's going to change the impact of the stormwater runoff. We've also seen changes in the ice records, as in we go out and, actually we don't, we just have observation of ice cover for the entire lake. Since, I believe, 1908, one of the fire stations started it, and it's kind of evolved over the years. We've taken that data and built some models to kind of predict where and when the ice is occurring, and try to project that into the future based on climate change scenarios. We published a paper a few years ago now on lake warming. We've seen differences in the lake warming between the two different basins. We've seen a longer growing season. We've seen an increase of like 1.3 or 4 degrees C over the 30 years of study. That number is not to be trusted. It's in the report. Dissolved oxygen is one place we're going to next. Just a little background on dissolved oxygen. Dissolved oxygen declines when there's extra organisms in the water that fall down into the lower sediments and then eat up the oxygen on their decay. When that happens, in low oxygen concentrations, sometimes phosphorus from in the sediments can be released. If that occurs, we call this internal loading. We know that this is occurring in the summer months when we have our vertical profilers, and not in the summer months, in the late fall before turnover. But in the winter time, it's less clear what's going on, and so we're putting in some sensors that sit in the water column throughout the year, throughout the winter, theoretically under ice. Okay, that's it for climate change. Any questions?
Very thorough.
Okay, native biota. We're biologists mostly at the Institute, and so we desperately care about biology. That's what we are interested in mostly. We wind up dealing with a lot of other information as well, which is great, but this is where it probably be the least read part of the report, but where the most fun is. Anyway, so let's just go through the highlights of the bacteria, or the biology that we've studied. Microorganisms, we've done general bacterial community analysis. I think this was just published last year, this fall, where we go and take a little bit of water, chop up all the DNA in there, and then amplify that DNA, a specific portion of it, and say which microbes are in there. And which microbes are in there are kind of encapsulated in this graph that nobody really knows, not even me. what exactly each one of those organisms are, but this generalized bacterial analysis gives us a baseline for understanding. As we go into the future, that will become very important. E. coli, we've been involved in E. coli for years. We're kind of stepping out of that game. E. coli being what closed Million Dollar Beach and Shepherd's Beach and a couple of beaches here and there. We've been helped on the track down of where that E. coli is coming from with our methodology. We do still have some methods that we can use, but at this point we're not state certified for E. coli analysis anymore. It's just a funding shortfall, really. Pico-eukaryotes, this one's completely wild. You would get something just like this. We did this 20 years ago, and it's teeny tiny eukaryotes, so the organisms have a nucleus. So tiny organisms less than, I think it was less than 64 microns. That's fine. Cyanophage is another microorganism we've dealt with. Just like humans are affected by viruses, bacteria have a virus to them. The bacteria virus is called a phage. Cyano, being the cyanobacteria, has a virus that can infect them, and it has this potential of maybe shaping the cyanobacterial community. Quite frankly, we are at the infancy of that, but that's coming in 20 years or so.
Oh, Jeremy, back
Yes.
to that other slide.
Yeah.
So can you say that each one of those microorganisms and the way you have it color-coded and the way they're changing it throughout the different months, that the numbers of each of them are indicative of the quality, the water quality, whether if the dissolved oxygen is good, if there's low nutrients in the water, so some of them can thrive in a better environment than others?
I would love to say that at this point we cannot. We just don't have enough information. This is bacterial community analysis. I'll give it to you, there's a lot of work going into this, but at this point, just taking this sample and saying, oh, that's from the, as I recall, that was the North Basin. In July, we have this. It's tough to really give that the credence it deserves.
Okay, and I'm a little chagrined at the fact that you can't monitor E. coli anymore, which is definitely a result of, of faulty septic systems and, bad nutrients that are going into the lake.
We do have the capabilities. It's just that we don't have the, there hasn't been the need recently to do it. We can spin it back up, but we need to apply for Department of Health, what do you call this, licensing or whatever.
Yeah,
that
I
is.
understand, but can another agency? do
Certainly
something
there's
like
other
that?
people who do it. So drinking water needs to be monitored.
Right.
I think Joe Biss is doing it. And
Yes, okay, because
Yeah.
we sampled at Hewlett's Landing for well over a decade
Mm-hmm.
with the water keeper, and we found really good trends.
Yeah.
And we could pinpoint where pollution was entering the lake.
No doubt it's a useful thing to do. It's just a matter of where we put our resources.
Okay.
And we just have decided that, well, Larry retired and we have there's not another person that fills exactly that role.
No, it's
Larry's kind of it.
it's very time consuming.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
You bet. Anything else on microorganisms?
Sorry for that.
No, I appreciate the questions. Benthic organisms, these are the organisms that live in the mud. In 1920, Needham et al. Was out collecting samples. One of the most beautiful studies that's ever occurred on Lake George. It's what I go to sleep reading. It is beautiful. They did really nice work measuring everything they could at that time in the lake. One of the things they did was did a nice assessment of the benthics. The reason they did so much work on the benthics was because they were looking to build a new fish hatchery, and fish need to eat something. They love eating things in the mud. Some of them do anyway. Anyway, so they did a nice job collecting that. Jefferson Project's been doing a lot of work in this space as well. They're collecting at 45 sites-ish, and they've been collecting benthics for some time. They throw a little dredge, pull up, and then look at individuals in the mud to help support their food web model. Just a little side note, this organism is the prettiest organism in the lake. That's Lampsilus radiata. It is a unionidae. It has a fantastic reproduction cycle, but it's also a really not super well understood organism. And so we've been, since 1999, we built these little pens in the lake, pick them up, put a little tag on it, and we go back every so often, and hopefully in a couple of weeks we're going to be going out and collecting them again and studying the growth rates and how quickly they reproduce and all that stuff. Families. And we do it across the lake as well, so that's enough on benthics, unless it's not. Okay, the native plant community, 1976, Ogden et al. Wrote a field guide to the plants in Lake George. Beautiful document. And it's got really nice line drawings of everything that's there. It'd be worth taking pictures of all those things, but it's a really nice document. Most of the studies that occur on the native plant community occur in relationship to some sort of management activity. So is there milfoil here? Is there Asian clam here? We're going to mat, we're going to do whatever. We go and take some samples. And we have some decent information over time on the location, diversity, and abundance of the native plants. One thing that's been ignored since the mid-'80s is Nightella. Effectively, there is this, it doesn't belong, it's a native plant. It's actually a macroalga that lives in about 7 to 12 meters. Is this big ribbon of what kind of looks like grass all the way around the lake. Not all the way, close enough. And it basically sucks all the nutrients out of the water and stores them deep so we don't have to look at that green water up top. Thank you, Nightella. We're studying that in the future. Questions on the native plant community? Okay, phytoplankton. Phytoplankton, again, studied in 1920 by Needham et al. Because fish need something to eat. It's been sporadically characterized over the years. There was some work done in the 70s. A little bit done in the 80s, some in the 90s, 2000. You'll see it's just as sporadic because usually it's in relation to some graduate student comes in and we train them up and then they go away and then we don't have phytoplankton expert for a couple of years. Most recently, the diatom community was assessed in the southern versus the northern basin. That should be southern versus northern by Rick and his collaborators in Ohio, maybe? I can't quite remember. I think that was published 2-3 years ago. And we also have been doing some benthic algal surveys, as is Chris, by the way, where we go and put a tile out and measure the algal growth on some tile, or we go and try to relate that to land use. And that's ongoing. We also use that bentho torch for that scenario. Also, that group at RPI is doing that. Diane's running that. I don't quite remember what he's doing. And we have a graduate student right now who's trying to look at climate change and how the phenology of ice impacts the benthic algal community. Okay, so there you go. Zooplankton. Needham, 1920. Beautiful pictures of the organisms that are there. Studies, this is again the same scenario where only a handful of times has it been enumerated and quantified. Most recently was to look at the changes in the nutrient concentration north to south, climate change, and the impact of invasive species. More on that in a couple of minutes. Okay, zooplankton. Fish, Needham, 1920, the reason they were doing it. A really nice catalog was produced by Carl George of Union College back in 1980. About a decade ago, I don't know why, but I just started collecting all the old newspaper articles I could find on fishing in Lake George and books and whatever, and I had put together the history of the fishery that I'd love to turn into something more eventually. It just hasn't happened yet. And mostly recently with the fish, the yellow perch were target of a survey where we caught a bunch of them, looked at the stomach contents, and looked at the differences in the composition of what they were eating to see the diet change between the two. We see it in the growth rates between the two basins, and we were trying to relate that to what they're eating. Okay, so since 1967, our goal at the Freshwater Institute was to understand the biology in Lake George. We built a bunch of computer models in the 1960s with the punch cards and whatnot. At this point, and we built a really nice model. We called it Cleaner, and that eventually became Aquatox, which you can download today off the EPA website. We have renewed that effort in a real way. A couple of papers in the past year or two looking at the Lake George food web and trying to parse it out in a more modern way, in actually a really nice way. That's your food web. Shall we move on to invasive species? All right, invasive species. Here's your $1 million beach with curly leaf. What's this called? Eurasian water milfoil. And in there, I promise you, there's a zebra mussel. We have been trying to understand invasive species whenever they come, and we try to parse it out in the best possible way. With Asian clams, we've been, they were first found in 2010, and we've been trying to, since then, understand the basic biology of them. A couple of years, we did collection 25 per site, 3 sites, cut them open every week, get the exact timing of their reproduction, how often they're reproducing, and that sort of thing. We've used that information really well and get a sense of their population structure as well. We were deeply involved in the management. Unfortunately, there's no other way to say this. We failed on the management. They are great to be managed with benthic barrier in the short term. In the medium term, they come back. The Lake George Park Commission funded some work we did back in 2016 or 17 where the Asian clams were moving about the lake, and we called it the Acorn Project, Asian Clams on the Run. And we were looking at their movement in the lake. Park Commission does nice work mapping the spread, going back to the same locations year after year on a volunteer basis. Really nice work. It's not our work, but we put it in the report because it's so nice. And lastly, during this basic biology program, I had this student cutting things up, and she came to me and was like, "There's something moving in there." I'm like, "Yeah, it's a clam." And she's like, "Nah, this is different." Turned out it was Chatagastor limnae, a little worm that we previously hadn't known about that eats the juveniles out of the reproducing clams in the site. Looked like it has a real possibility of controlling the population structure at the location where it was in Boone Bay. Something I should get back to at some point.
Jeremy, did you guys determine whether that Chatagastor was native to the lake or somehow brought in with Asian clam?
A way to identify that is if we went and looked for it in the other organisms, and had we done that before that. I don't know if it's a host of, like, say, the banded mystery snail, the viviparous. I just don't know. It might have come in then. Who knows?
Yeah.
Good question.
Because we talked about, biological controls and the challenges that history has shown us with bringing in other species to control problems. And so my memory of the debate and what was involved with this at the LGA back in the day was, if we're going to even consider that as something that we would want to explore, is it native to the lake? And I never really understood the outcome of that.
I don't have a good answer for you on the fly. Yeah, it's a good question.
We can talk more about that.
Yeah.
Jeremy, one other question on that. It was found in Boone Bay, I think, in that
yeah.
one site. And then, as I recall, we were looking to see if it was spreading or if it was in the other sites. At the time, it was not. Do we know if it has spread to the other sites, or is it still just in that one site?
It is now currently in the Lake George Village population at one of the locations. That's the last time I looked, into 2 years ago or so. Okay. And it was surprising. I was like, wow, interesting. We'll see what happens.
So just for our board's clarification, we're hoping, and it'll probably be Jeremy's wrap up, but we're hoping to continue the relationship with Darren Freshwater, looking for various types of science that will inform future project needs for the protection of the lake. And we have some internal ideas where we're going to be looking for some of the board's thoughts on this as well. Ideas like that of do we see this built, in other locations throughout the lake? And Darren Freshwater is not a non-for-profit. They need funding to drive research, to drive staff, and all these types of things. So that's where the commission can be helpful. And those conversations at this board's level are going to be important in the future.
Okay. Thanks for the advert. Eurasian water milfoil, first found in 1986 in the lake. For quite some time, we were deeply involved in the research. Water milfoil reproduction is almost exclusively done by chopping, and then it grows its little roots, and then it lands in a new location and can move. It does have the opportunity of going to seed like any other, flowering organism. I just have never seen it in flower in Lake George. It's not a typical thing. Usually it's movement the other way. Physical management strategies, that was most of the work at the Institute in the 90s on Lake George, was looking for what's the best way to manage, be it hand harvesting, suction harvesting, or matting. And they basically concluded that every site's a little different. Part of my dissertation was trying to detect Eurasian water milfoil with hydroacoustics, send the sound down, comes back, what's in there, where's the bottom, and then try to build an algorithm that defines that ping location as far as how dense it is in there. And then I could tease apart, hey, this is mostly milfoil in this space, and then apply that information going forward to mapping milfoil in a three-dimensional space. Not our work, but the county is doing some really nice work with you guys, putting together all that old management information in a really nice website. So they're doing really nice work. Okay. Zebra mussels, first found in 1999 by Joe Zarzynski down in the southwest corner of the lake. We did a lot of management at that time. We had scuba divers down picking out each individual organism and then giving it to some younger guy to measure every single one of them, an older guy. But that was what I was doing then, was measuring every single one of those organisms that came out of the lake. 22,000 in the first 2 or 3 years. The way zebra mussels reproduce is they're broadcast spawners. They send up their gametes into the water column and they spit that way. We go out with nets and try to pick them up to see if there's successful spawning in the lake. So we've got this planktonic reproduction surveillance. We developed the first molecular technique to identify the 18S ribosomal RNA for those villagers. Ongoing search and removal efforts. We're out there collecting. Anytime somebody calls us up and says, hey, we think we got zebra mussels, we'll go over and check it out. Usually it's Viviparous georgiana or some other organism. We have had 12 locations where it has been zebra mussels. We've collected every single one of them and given it to somebody younger to measure and get some information. What's nice is every single time when we do this, we see over time fewer organisms. I mean, you don't catch every one of them every time you go. Fewer organisms are caught, and every time the actual median size of those organisms goes up and up, implying that they're not naturally reproducing in the lake. Spiny water flea. Geez, I'm going to say 2012 or 14. I don't know. 2012, yeah. Oh, it's on my slide. Nice. First introduction in 2012. We had a graduate student at the time who said, oh, I'd like to take that on. How did it restructure the population of zooplankton in the lake? And we saw like the absolute disappearance of one of the organisms that lives in the lake. Back in the 1920s, they were identifying Daphnia pulicaria. By the way, it's still here. But it was like mostly absent for some time. That population crashed in 2016. We still had the graduate student. And so he was like, what am I going to do? We had to go to other locations to get more of these spiny water fleas because he wanted to open them up and see what they were eating so that he could directly compare that to his zooplankton data. He didn't open them up, he just used molecular techniques to do so. So that population crashed in 2016. There was like 1 or 2 found in 2019, 2 or 3 found in 2020, and more than we've ever seen last fall. A tremendous amount of spiny water flea were found last fall. Why? What? Ongoing. Other invasive species projects we've worked on, you all have built this really nice infrastructure for boat wash stations. The state has followed on with that. We've done some work taking that information from the boat wash stations. You show up, you're Dave Wick, you show up and you say, hey, I'm Dave, this is my boat, this is the type of boat, this is where I was last, all that information. It gets saved as a survey. We've built some machine learning algorithms to predict whether or not a boat arriving at the boat wash station should have an invasive species on it. And we've been pretty successful with that. Quite frankly, at this point, it's just academic. Like, hey, we can do it. At some point, we want to turn that into like more actionable. Hey, extra eyes on this boat, or whatever the possibility is. Early detection, we go out, we scan the literature, we have our finger on the pulse of the local limnology community and know which invasive species are in the area. And we do little surveys to say, hey, is this in the lake yet or not? And so we do that with, like, last year we were doing rusty crayfish or bloody red shrimp, the hemimysis, we've done it with a bunch of things. We're just trying to survey to hopefully get a no, but we're surveying to see what's there. We've done some work trying to detect species using molecular techniques from a variety of different things. It's not a real long-term effort at this point. We need to really focus if we want to do that. Emerging threats. Emerging threats include, we're going to just go with 3 of them. One of them is harmful algal blooms, not a thing until 2020 as far as everybody was concerned. Recent observations, several of them. We have to like really get on the same page of what we call a bloom and how we deal with blooms and all of that. We have a lot of ongoing research in this space. Studying the stream's influence on harmful algal blooms, studying storm's influence on harmful algal blooms. Nitrogen and phosphorus ratios may be controlling whether or not cyanobacteria are growing, and doing some forecasting into the future with that space. We've done some microplastic sampling. We've drug a net over the top of the lake and measured all the microplastics in those samples. Clear differences north to south. We've done biotic samples. Those same students who are opening up the clams for reproduction purposes are also looking for microplastics. Also, native mussels. We've only done a couple of them, mostly. Yeah. Sediment samples, we have comparable levels to sediments when we do the same techniques. They have done it in the Great Lakes. And finally, mercury. We've done a lot of work in mercury, looking all across the watershed. We've got a nice mercury analyzer. We want to use it, so we've done it in the streams, in the water, in the sediments, in the bugs. We've done it in the lake, in the fish, in the zooplankton community, and we tried to like figure out where things are higher. It seems like the corridor in Bolton is a little higher than the rest of it, and we're still trying to suss out why that all is. In summary, the goal of this report was to provide an engaging, succinct, and accessible, maybe not too succinct, an accessible summary of the many scientific studies in Lake George and its watershed. Hopefully we've accomplished that. Secondary goal was to help bridge gaps between any policy things that you guys are working on, pull the science into that conversation. There are so many people to thank. All the data here is publicly available. There's decades and decades and decades of scientists and engineers at DFWI who have been working here. As far as like funding, Jefferson Project with the LGA Fund, IBM, IPI, Froelich Foundation, NSF, EPA, DEC, Fire Commission, NAF, and Nature Conservancy. Probably there's more than that. Those are like the highest contributors. We wrote this report and then sent it off to review from Dr. Charles Borland, Jim Sutherland, and Brendan Wiltsey, and we really appreciate their comments. I took all the words from this presentation and made a nice little word cloud, and there it all is. Any questions? Yeah.
Jeremy, I'm assuming that, for example, you just answered my question. We have access to the actual numbers of all these scientific studies. For example, mercury. So am I correct to assume that if any of the mercury levels in any of the fish that you're testing reach a level that you would feel is not safe, that you would somehow get that information out to the public?
So, yes, we would. The general advisory for the Adirondacks, when we measure mercury in fish, it fit within that same range, so we didn't really feel like it was necessary to say, hey, that's the same.
Well, that's what I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And we have access to those numbers. You just said that everything's online it's been published.
So that's a good point. With respect to mercury, I don't know where you would find it online, but if you called us up or tip-tapped on your keyboard, we would put you in contact with Mark Swinton, who's done all the mercury for years, and answer any questions.
And then if there is a harmful algal bloom, I understood that you're monitoring the weather and the temperatures and, what's going down as far as the dynamics of the lake.
Mm-hmm.
If you think that would you have access or know that this area of the lake might be one that we could get a harmful algal bloom in the next week, and you would be able to be on the alert for something like that?
I think that's the eventual goal. So publicly available doesn't mean publicly available in the way that you just defined. Yeah. What I meant is we've done a report or we've done a presentation and said, this is what we're trying to do. And frankly, they are working on exactly that, but we're not at the point of saying, hey guys, look out in, I don't know, Boone Bay, Basin Bay, whatever, because we think we're just not there yet.
All right, and if there is a harmful algal bloom, whose responsibility is it to get that information to the people that live around it?
That's a great question. I don't have an answer for you.
Okay.
Actually, how do we define harmful algal blooms is a great question too.
True.
Yeah. Does it have to have toxins? Does it have to be a certain concentration? There's a lot there. It's not my work, but there's work that should be done in that space.
Thank you very much. Appreciated your presentation.
Thank you. Chris.
Great job, thank you.
Hey, thanks.
Jeremy, and to the Park Commission. Question, is there a list of all the reports? Like,
So
is there
at the
appendix or something?
Yeah. So I didn't think it was needed in the presentation, but when it's actually.
Yeah, I didn't think it would.
Yeah.
But there will be?
There will be. Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks.
That's it?
Thank you, Jeremy.
Hey, thank you guys.
Well, that deserves a couple of wows. Item number 5. The Lake George Park Commission's been working on program updates, and we've got some reports, starting with boat inspections. Justin.
Yeah, so our boat inspection program is in full swing. Has been run since April 15th at the various inspection stations around the lake. We started the season with some equipment failure. The equipment is 10 years or greater in service, and we're seeing some wear and tear on some of the equipment, which is to be expected. So we've been busy replacing parts and servicing parts as well, and also just trying to build a general pile of consumables, if you will. So that's in progress. We have actually been in pretty good shape this season with staffing, although I have been asked to work the 27th of July. That's $1 million beach. I'm not sure I'm available that day. That's yet to be determined. But generally, things are running very smoothly. I probably shouldn't have said that. We're very fortunate. We've got Ben Marshall as our new trades generalist this year. Ben, previously a vessel inspection technician for us for a few years, so he's familiar with the program. He's been taking over a lot of the daily operations, and he's been immensely helpful. There's really, at this point, not a lot to report, which I think is a good thing.
How's our relationship with Lake Champlain with that
That's improving. I've heard less reports from the staff there of boats with duct tape over the registration numbers on the boats. So I think they're getting more comfortable with our presence there. And there were some line boats that would zoom out of the parking lot without talking to us, and now they'll stop and chit chat a little bit, which is good. They're warming up to us there. Any other questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next item is septic inspections.
I can take that, Mr.
There
Chairman.
you go.
So we are into septic inspection season. To date, we've had 54 complete inspections. Last year, as you may recall, we had a number of failures, about 23% failed, and 46% passed. So far, we have roughly 59% that have passed, so more systems that are looking good. About 32% substandard, so either they're undersized or they need some kind of attention to bring them into compliance. We have another 50 inspections that are pending, which is good. So all told, over 100 that we've had contact with, another 9 that have been incomplete we've seen but have to go back. And again, the goal is always to get about 500. It's always, so far in the program, sort of a slow start. We had a lot more inspections late in the season last year, September, October. I think folks not wanting to mess up their lawn, dig up their tank, that sort of thing. But so far, off to a good start, and the numbers are promising.
Trying to get my phone to stop. My doctor calling me. Are we on pace with our original plans, number-wise?
I think so. If you'll recall, we didn't inspect 500 systems last year, but we gathered information on 500. We did maybe roughly 350 inspections, but learned about another 150, whether they be enhanced treatment units or new systems going in or inspection upon transfer, things of that. So we were in contact with at least 500 landowners and gathered information. Whether it takes an extra year or so to get through all 2,500, I don't think we'd be surprised if that happens. But so far, cooperation's been great. We do put this in the hands of the landowner to coordinate, an inspection with the hauler. So we're kind of, trying to work with landowners as best we can on their schedule, so we can't dictate exactly what day the inspection occurs, which is, in a perfect world, to be spread out right throughout the inspection season. But so far, everything's going well, and continue to be surprised by the number of folks. I was just talking with a gentleman yesterday who is due for inspection this year, already hired an engineer, determined himself that he was going to fail, and is being proactive, putting in a new system. So he asked if he could be pushed until next year. His system should be going in this fall. So, those kinds of things we love to hear. We get a copy of, the pending plans or the contract, make sure they're making good progress. But that's been the situation in a lot of cases where folks, once they thought about it, once they knew about the program, realized that they could do better, and they're doing that on their own, which is great.
You said the pass rate is increased, is a little better than last year.
So far, yes.
It's too early yet to tell overall, but are you seeing a different type of failure? People are being proactive, you say. Does that mean the failures are less serious than last year because some people that have real serious problems are taking care of it on their own?
I didn't tease out the types of failures and substandards in the day
Too
yet.
early this year.
Yeah, I think it's a little early. Nothing, we're talking with the inspectors every day, and they kind of come back and, report their findings. Nothing substantially different, sort of anecdotally, but it is good to see them more passing, which is a good sign.
We hear problems about community septic systems, inability to accept loads and things like that. Is that affecting us at all?
We have not done, we've probably only inspected a couple of community systems. We didn't want to get into...
I mean, the truck that leaves the residence to go somewhere to empty.
I see.
The hauler.
Yeah, the community, so the wastewater facilities.
Glens Falls, like...
Yeah, Dave might be able to speak to that a little bit more as far as how much effluent can be received at the local wastewater treatment plants. Any updates on that, Dave?
Yeah, just each facility is kind of challenged in its ability to handle the septage effluent right now. The village of Lake George historically been in the range of 40,000 gallons a day they could take from private haulers down to about 14,000 per day. Ticonderoga was, I can't remember the exact numbers, they're reduced by about 50 to 60% from what they had originally had. Concerningly, even Glens Falls went from 30 loads a day to 8. So each of the haulers is kind of having to pre-schedule kind of those dumps. So just for our new commissioners, when you have a septic truck come in, the density of the material in that truck is much greater than a traditional wastewater treatment plant influent. So they have to kind of parse it out and get it injected at the right time frame. So the Village of Lake George is actually looking for additional resources to be able to accept more. They have a request into the state of New York. It wasn't well received in the first round of funding because it's very different than the types of funding that's put out by the EFC, but I know they're working with the governor's office and DEC to try to see if they can get a system that will accommodate more of that flow. Glens Falls is working to increase their capacity as well, so is Ticonderoga, but these things are long-term challenges. And so we're trying to do what we can as a small state agency to at least let Albany know that this is kind of a big deal. And our program is increasing that amount that's going to these facilities. And Matt Fuller is probably the most knowledgeable person that I know on it because he represents a lot of the towns that have these wastewater treatment plants. And we were trying to get a project together to have he and Sean Doty work together and kind of do a deeper dive on that. We haven't been able to get that out of the door yet, but we're hoping to soon.
Dave, with that big change happening this year versus last, will it have the significant, are they able to schedule it so we can keep going in the numbers? Because that's huge compared to last year.
So far, it's almost like a race to the wastewater treatment plant, unfortunately. The Village of Lake George has been more than accommodating. Tim Shutt, that runs the plant, says, we're going to try to prioritize the Lake George disposals over outside of the region, which is helpful, but yeah, it's an ongoing challenge.
During the 24 months that volunteer committee worked on and planned and designed this septic inspection program, that was one of the major things that we spent a lot of time talking about, realizing that we had no control in the future and scared to death of what almost is happening today happens, and we just have to adjust with it and roll. So, good, thank you.
I have a question. Just curious, is there a master schedule accessible to all of us somewhere showing where we fall and in what year we should be expected to be inspected?
Yeah, so we had to parse out all the properties, 500 per year. We tried to sort of group them by neighborhood, so that way in case a hauler could do 2 sites, close by, there could be some convenience built in if folks are cooperating and talking to each other. And we also tried to spread it out throughout the municipalities. We're not doing 500 a year in Queensbury and just overloading that community. Short answer is that data is on our public web mapper right on our webpage. So if you go to our homepage, there's a septic tab, and then you can see the different years are color coded. And if you find your parcel, you'll be able to figure out what year you're slated for.
Thank you.
You bet.
No dartboard?
No dartboard.
Milfoil control.
Yeah, I'll highlight, we're happy to have, for our new commissioners, we contract with AE Commercial Diving out of Manchester, Vermont. We've had we've gone through our first 5-year contract with them. I think, Justin, we need to talk about, they're coming to the end of their second 5-year contract. They had some challenges this year getting started because the 2 primary foremen for the company have kind of parsed off of AE and will be subbing out through AE, the foreman that work on Lake George. They've struggled with their workman's comp, so we're 3 weeks behind. They only started yesterday. So they do kind of daily texts. So they're working South Basin right now. We have 2 crews working. The 3rd crew is going to start next week. Eastbrook Delta is holding up well, which is fantastic. Village Docks and Dog Beach are reduced from last year, which is also good news. They're going to finish those this week, and they're moving on to, there's a new site that we discovered last year in Cleverdale by Boots by George, a large, probably 3-4 acre site that they're going to be hitting, and that's going to take them probably several weeks to kind of plow through. So yeah, we have these discussions, and with them, they're very interactive with us, which is helpful, and since we started a few weeks later than we ever have, we're probably going to go a little bit later into the season, and Jeremy will probably want to talk to you a little bit about at what point do you think ultimately that when the plants become so fragile to the end of the season, we may be doing a little more harm than good, so we'll maybe have those conversations. But yeah, so we have started, unfortunately a little late, but they're out there up and running now.
Good. Any thoughts? Moving on.
They're just like,
Sorry, I have another question.
Fine.
In Harris Bay, is there a constant effort, is it in the plan with the harvesters to constantly harvest from the channel there that goes from the yacht club up the bay because, it's full? And all the inspecting of the boats coming into the lake doesn't do anything when the boats are churning that stuff up and carrying them up the lake every time they go down the bay. I'm just curious to know if that's a priority.
Yeah, Harris Bay has been one of our most difficult bays in all of Lake George. We made a decision a couple of years ago as a group that right now we need to put a pause onto Harris Bay because we would spend tens of thousands of dollars every year and go back every single year to be the same. So we're looking at Harris Bay and what we're going to do about that in the future. But right now we don't have any plans to do Harris Bay.
Those are tough problems to face. Marine Patrol.
Okay, Marine Patrol. We operate from May 1st up until October 31st. So we just one boat on the water. Very early in season, very late in season. Right now, we've got 2 on the water during the week and 3-4 on weekends. Come this Saturday, however, our full summer schedule will start. We'll have anywhere from 5 to 8 boats on the water from the Park Commission. We also have dedicated PWC patrols, so on Saturday and Sunday, there'll be at least 1 jet ski out there, weather permitting. Work very closely with the Warren County Sheriff's Department. There could be 2 of their boats out there. State police are on the water on Friday through Sundays. DEC police are out there on and off, so the lake is pretty well covered. We monitor Channel 16, but often that gets overridden by the Sheriff's Department. We're in Channel 16. Recommend anybody that has an emergency, call 911. The Sheriff's Department does dispatch our patrols as well as theirs. If it's a non-emergency, somebody's anchored somewhere that, it's not supposed to be, or, something that's not serious, you can call the Sheriff's Department regular non-emergency number, 743-2500. So, we don't want to inundate them with 911 calls for things that aren't emergencies. Patrol from all agencies are the first responders on the lake. We get there and if somebody's hurt, we try to bandage them up a little bit until EMS gets there, which can often be 20, 30 minutes by the time the fire department can get the crew to the boat and go down. So, the Park Commission has 12 officers. We operate 7 days a week. We're available 24 hours a day. We start early in the morning, and certain nights we don't get done until midnight. But we've been called in at 2 o'clock in the morning. The Sheriff's Department calls. They can't get one of their guys on a boat. They'll call us. We have a boat in Ticonderoga. We have 4 on Bolton Landing and 3 in the village. We have officers that live close to all those locations, so we can get out there pretty quick if there's an emergency. So far, we've had 1 accident to report, and that was reported that a woman had bumped her head on a canopy on a boat and knocked her out. Didn't turn out to be too serious, but the last few years it's been pretty good. We don't have that many accidents. I think last year I submitted 15 accident reports to New York State Parks and Rec, which is amazing for the number of boats that go on. Finally, anybody born after January 1st, 1978 this year has got to have a motor safety certificate. Next year, anybody who operates a vessel in New York State has got to have a motor safety certificate. We do offer classes. Almost half our patrol are trained to teach the classes. If you have a homeowners group or something that wants a class, we're happy to put it on at no charge. Just let us know. We have taught 2 classes already. We've got a 3rd one coming up early July, and that's full already, but we're thinking about putting another one on mid-July or early August. So that's about it for the patrol. Any questions? Yes.
Does that certificate expire?
That does not expire. No. And you can get one online. It takes 8 hours to select the class, but if you go to New York State Parks and Recreation website, they show where you get it online if you've ever. Yes.
Do you recognize surge from another state?
Yes.
20 years old.
If you have the certificate from another state,
My neighbor has, one from Jersey, and I think you should take the course. He's like, well, I haven't heard you get whatever to show that. His driver's license, he's a New York resident, but the surge from Jersey. So.
Yeah. So we recognize other states recognize New York.
Okay.
How many gallons of gas do we use a year for patrolling?
Between 13,000 to 14,000 gallons of gas each year. We have 9 patrol boats, 2 jet skis. So, we're obviously out there doing something. We're burning a lot of gas.
Yeah, where's that cop when I need him, right? And finally, regulatory/permitting. Is that you?
That is me. Thank you, Chairman. So the board gets to see maybe 2 dozen projects annually, things that need variances, things that are of public concern. In general, in a typical year, as Molly Gallagher, our longtime analyst, is here, can tell you, we do about 250 to 300 applications per year. That's reviewed by usually an analyst, so Randy or myself, historically Molly. We also have a program aide, Connie Harris, who keeps us in line, keeps administration moving, permit renewals, that sort of thing. In a typical year, we'll have 150 dock or mooring applications. To date, we've had 82, so we're about halfway through the year. We've got a little bit more than half of what we expect. Typical year would be 50 to 70 stormwater applications or jurisdictional inquiries. We're right at 28, so right in that sweet spot in the middle. Same thing with marinas, usually 10 marinas and a handful of tour boats. We've had 5 marina applications and 2 tour boats. So pretty much business as usual, about halfway through what we typically see in a year, and we're about halfway through the year.
Thank you. Thanks for pointing out Molly. I didn't see her there. She's right behind.
Oh, I didn't
Nice to see you.
Molly's here.
Molly was my mentor when I first came on the Park Commission. If she said something, I sat down and listened.
And Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to thank Joe. Between the time when Jason left and Randy came on, Joe was probably working ballpark 50 to 60 hours a week just to kind of keep the trains moving, just a huge amount of effort. You guys probably don't get them, but I get emails from Friday night at 11 o'clock to Sunday morning at whatever time, and yeah, so he's done well. And he also has the new challenge, of course, of getting Randy, very experienced staff worker, tremendous background and experience. Running permits is a little bit trickier. I made the yeoman's mistake, early mistake, within 2 weeks of work of asking Molly, I'm like, how hard can docs be? And she like a Christmas tree. Finally came to understand there's a lot to it. So he's also been doing that. So we appreciate Randy coming on board. Absolutely. They make a great team. Great to be here.
Part of my theory has always been if someone's not mad at the Park Commission on any given day, we're probably not doing our job right. Okay, Mr. Joe, Project Review Actions Report.
Resolution 2024-23, accept Project Review Actions Report. Whereas the Park Commission has received and reviewed the Project Review Actions Report prepared by the staff and dated June 20th, 2024, and the Project Review Committee recommends acceptance of the Project Review Actions Report. Now therefore be resolved, the Commission directs that the Project Review Actions Report be incorporated in the minutes of a full Commission meeting. So moved.
Motion's made.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Hearing no nays? Carried. Thank you. First project, dock and sun deck variance in the town of Putnam. Am I looking towards this end of the table?
Yes, thank you. I'm reviewing this. This is Stephen Rosinski's application. There's an existing U-shaped dock with a boathouse that is authorized by registration of existing wharf back in 1981. Mr. Rosinski's asked for a modification to that existing U-shape, essentially to create a larger U-shape with what was a T, now is proposed as an L next to it, both with covered sun decks. We went out in the field to look at this. We'd received some public comment concerning potential impacts to navigation, potential impacts to visual appearances from in the bay looking out. So we brought some board members out there last week to get a feel for that visual impact and had some discussions with Mr. Rosinski. For clarity, this does not require a variance. This does meet commission regulations, design standards, that is, but we were looking at it to look at those other softer, more subjective impacts with respect to navigation and visual. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Rosinski to talk about the project.
Good morning. Thanks for the opportunity to present this. So back in March, we started this project, and working with Joe and Gary from Adirondacks, came up with some different concepts, and Joe walked us through the process to get to where we thought we had a good plan that he approved. At that point in time, that was in May, early May, we submitted it to the APA for a jurisdictional determination, and he put it out for public comment. The APA kicked it back for a setback violation, so we made some more adjustments, kind of got through that, and then last week, a number of you came out to address some of the concerns that were brought forward, in terms of the impact. As a result of that meeting, it was recommended that we push the dock 8 to 10 feet north. And in doing so, if we change the structure of the boathouse, the surface, that would allow us to push it back another 3 feet. So I think we have a pretty good plan at this point in time. You guys have some letters from the nearby neighbors that would have been of concern that they're okay with the project, including a letter from the president of the Glen Burnie Club, who remains neutral as long as we meet all the guidelines of the commission. So I'm asking for your approval to build this structure.
Do we have new letters, or is it just the letters that we had before we?
So we received 2 new letters, one from the president of the Glen Burnie Club that oversees the beach area, where we received some comments about visual impact. I put that on your desk just this morning, basically saying they're going to remain neutral in the matter, and just hope that people follow the regulations. And then another comment from Robert Stevenson saying he had an opportunity to review the plans, and he is okay with them. This one's sort of been moving minute by minute. We went and looked at it last week. Some suggestions were made. Can you move it, 10 feet to the north? They have submitted updated plans, which I provided to you recently. They have moved the dock to the north, and they've also brought it into shore a couple feet. One of the things that was submitted yesterday, possibly, to satisfy the APA has unique regulations where a dock meets shore, and it's a little nuanced, where a dock meets shore, it can't be more than 8 feet wide. But where a boathouse meets shore, doesn't have that restriction. And so Mr. Rosinski, in his most recent submittal, he had moved the dock to the north, but based on previous guidance from APA, he thought he had to make the boathouse roof wider so that way he could move it into shore. And so essentially the boathouse, in yesterday's plans, only moved 5 feet to the north to address the visual impact. However, I emailed APA this morning at 6:30. Mr. Rosinski went out of his way, talked to APA, and the understanding is that boathouse roof, that sun deck, does not need to be widened in order to move it back. It would still be considered a boathouse. And so we believe, as of 10 a.m. this morning, with updated plans.
Those plans are probably updated now. I reached out after I talked to Matt. Did he send them to you already?
So Dean Howland is
Yeah.
in the background. I've been emailing and getting updated plans, so we're sort of literally minute by minute on plans. But I think, what they've submitted, and in our discussions, the understanding is that the dock can be modified to be moved 10 feet to the north, as can the associated boathouse structure, and also worth mentioning that southern pier that jutted out into the bay and made it a T-dock. That was noted by a number of folks in their public comments. That's also been completely removed.
So we'd be moving it slightly more than the diagram we got a little while ago, or exactly that amount?
I think exactly that amount. The one issue was, could the boathouse also move 10 feet, or did it have to get wider, thereby the net effect being 5 feet? As of, this morning, conversations with APA.
The ink is still wet, is what you're saying.
The belief is that, per your conversation with APA this morning, the boathouse can also be moved 10 feet to the north, which is consistent with recommendations from the board in the field last week.
Feel free to sit down if you would like.
Yeah, I guess I'm good. If anybody got any questions?
Well, you're good after we take a vote. And after I ask if anybody else is in the room would like to speak to this subject. For, again, above, beyond, but we're comfortable, right, Joe?
I think so, and I would, there are a lot of board members on site, so I'd invite, you guys.
We had an
to
inspection trip?
Talk about what you saw.
Quite a few visit the site, and I think everybody agreed that the proposed dock changes are what we expected and appropriate. So I don't know if any other commissioners wanted to speak to it, but I think we're all in consensus.
Anybody want to add before we read?
I think just before you read the resolution, just for clarity, I again made the mistake of titling the resolution approved dock variance. Again, this is not a variance, so please don't read that. And also, just for clarity, maybe as conditions of approval, since the plans are sort of in flux, approving it with the dock being moved and the sun deck 10 feet to the north, and the understanding is that pier will be removed. Unless, I guess the question I would ask is if the APA, for some reason, doesn't allow the dock to be more narrow and requires it to be wider, are you okay with this project if the sun deck is only moved 5 feet to the north?
Well, I would say that we approve it with the condition that the staff concurs with the new proposal.
Okay.
Configuration.
So we're aiming for 10 unless APA precludes that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Resolution 2024-24. Application is DWM 24-4047. Applicant is Stephen Brzezinski. The applicant has applied for a permit for construction of a dock complex and sun deck. The Lake George Park Commission has reviewed the application, supporting documents, comments received, and other information which appears in the record. And the commission has made a determination pursuant to 6 NYCRR 645-3.6 and the State Environmental Quality Review Act 6 NYCRR 617.5 that the project is a Type 2 action and does not require further review of potential impacts pursuant to this act. And whereas the action is a minor project pursuant to 6 NYCRR 645-5.3, public notice has been distributed in accordance with the regulations, and the commission finds that the project will have no adverse impact on the health, safety, or welfare of the public, the environment, or the resources of the park, will not alter the essential character of the area in which it is proposed, will not lead to congestion in the park, and will not have an undue visual, cultural, audible impact on the neighborhood or the park. Now therefore be resolved, the Lake George Park Commission hereby approves the above application with the conditions that the staff agrees with the new proposed configuration. So moved.
Motion's been made.
Second.
Here in a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Hearing no nays, it's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now you can beat feet if you want. Go get your bathing suit on and start working.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for your cooperation.
Item 8, dock and sun deck variance in the town of Fort Anne.
So this application was made by Mr. Burr at 1747 Pilot Knot Road. Again, we have an instance of a pre-existing dock. This is located in the sideline setback. It has a flat roof boathouse. and they're looking to increase the size, the height of the boathouse, and also the footprint a little bit inside that 20-foot setback, so moving up in that vertical plane requires a variance. As noted, the applicant is trying to reduce the overall footprint of the dock and get that a little bit more conforming. And on behalf of the applicant is Michael Tuck, who can talk a little bit more about the application.
Good morning. Thank you for taking the time. Mike Tuck with Balzer Tuck Architects here on behalf of the Burns. So they did purchase a lawfully existing non-conforming boathouse structure, and as Mr. Thune had pointed out, it has a flat roof but no railing or stair to access that sun deck, and they would like to have the opportunity to have a sun deck, which necessitates a need to increase the height. And they realized that with the nonconformity and then asking for additional relief in height to improve the wharf setbacks from the neighboring properties would be a good move. So we have reduced the width. The slip is going from 16 to a more typical 12-foot width, and the southerly leg of the U-shaped dock is going from an 8-foot to a 6-foot width. So we've reduced the overall area of the wharf on the non-conformance side of things, moved it further away from the neighbors. The sun deck, by nature of adding a railing and improving the structure, we would like to raise the height of it first off, and then also providing both an aesthetic improvement, we believe, and protection of the boat. We're adding roof overhangs around 4 sides. So it's the roof overhang that's causing us to increase the width of that sun deck, but the sun deck does not extend past the wharf, so we're not getting any closer to the side yard setbacks. As we mentioned in our cover letter, it's a bit unique in that their property is recessed in from the lake. So when we apply that perpendicular setback, it does create a sort of unbuildable or very limited area that as of right wharf could be constructed. And the neighbors to the north and the south have been approached, and they're both supportive of this and don't believe there's any negative impact to their enjoyment or view of the lake.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak for or against that project? Joe?
Well, we visited the site with a group of us, and although he's reducing the impact to the setback into the setback area, it sounds like it's a reasonable request to add the stairs and the sun deck. So I think everybody was in agreement when they went there that this is a reasonable approach to improving the site.
Any commissioners have any suggestions?
Skies opened up.
Oh, you needed your raincoat?
It was pretty nasty.
Maybe that's the reason I missed that. All right, do we have a resolution?
Yeah, resolution 2024-25. Application number is DWM 24-4065. Applicant is Scott Burke. Whereas the applicant has applied for a variance to expand the area and height of a boathouse, the Lake George Park Commission has reviewed the application, supporting documents, comments received, and other information which appears in the record. And whereas the commission has made a determination pursuant to 6 NY CRR 645-3.6 and the State Environmental Quality Review Act of 6 NY CRR 617.5 that the project is a Type 2 action and does not require further review of potential impacts pursuant to this act. And whereas the action is a minor project pursuant to 6 NY CRR 645-5.3 and public notice has been published and distributed consistent with the regulations. And whereas the applicant has requested a variance from 646-1.1C11, no dock shall be constructed in the 20-foot setback sideline setback. The applicant has demonstrated that strict conformance with the regulations will cause unnecessary hardship due to unique and peculiar circumstances which impose substantial financial and technical and safety burdens. And whereas the commission finds that there is no reasonable possibility that the applicant's property, or if no property is involved, the continuation of the applicant's business, enterprise, use, or activity will bring a reasonable return following conformance with the regulations. Whereas the commission finds that the project will have no adverse impact on the health, safety, or welfare of the public, the environment, or the resources of the park, will not alter the essential character of the area in which it is proposed, will not lead to congestion in the park, will not have an undue visual, cultural, or audible impact on the neighborhood or the park. Now therefore be resolved, the Lake George Park Commission hereby approves the request for a variance and approves the above application as proposed. So moved.
Motion.
Second.
Seconded. Any further discussion, questions, comments? Hearing none? All in favor? Aye. Any nays? Hearing none of those is carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Item 9, boathouse modification variance in the town of Queensbury.
Yep. This application was made by, yes?
Could I, to the board and to the public, I had a prior business relationship with this applicant, and I feel I can be impartial as our involvement did not involve the docks. But if anybody on the board or the public feels that I should excuse myself, I will do so.
Let's find out.
Fine.
We're not just taking your word on it. We'll test it.
Put it out there.
So, application was made by Robert Spath at 60 Russell Harris Road in Queensbury. This application is very similar to the last one in that this, again, is a pre-existing flat roof boathouse registered with the commission in 1981. It is located inside the 20-foot sideline setbacks, and similar to the last application, has never had a railing on it for use as a sun deck or stairs. So this new use, these expansions of the structure, represent an expansion of nonconformance inside that sideline setback. The applicant does not propose to increase the height of the roof, except for the application of the railing. And I believe I see Mrs. Spath here to represent the application.
I apologize. My husband is a teacher at Lake George High School. He's currently grading the physics regents. He graduates tomorrow. He's like, you're going to have to go. So I'm here to answer any questions should they come up to the best of my ability.
Thank you.
All right.
The skies similarly opened up on leap day and blew one of our flat roofs completely off, which prompted this process. So we'd like to make our vote.
We saw the open air.
No, we saw that. Yeah.
So we'd like to make our boathouse what our family has always dreamed it would be. We brought it, we believe, into compliance sometime in the late 70s when my in-laws had 3 children under the age of 4. They had put a deck, which was not in compliance. My husband has since removed that to make the deck what is, I think, an appropriate structure. And we just asked board approval to add a railing and some stairs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else here to speak to that project?
Well, I'm a neighbor of the Spaths, and we, along the shoreline, wholeheartedly support this.
Good. Thank you. We had a wet inspection?
Yeah, we went, inspected it.
Drying up when we got
Basically,
there.
it was the same as the previous application. It's one of those that seems to be the right fit for that particular configuration.
Okay. And the commission have any more comments? And I don't think this is going to be volatile, so you don't, in my opinion, you don't need to recuse. You have a...
Yep. Resolution 2024-26, application numbers DWM 24-4057. Applicant is Robert Spath. Whereas the applicant has applied for a variance to expand the height of a boathouse, the Lake George Park Commission has reviewed the application, supporting documents, comments received, and other information which appears in the record. And the commission has made a determination pursuant to 6 NY CRR 645-3.6 and the State Environmental Quality Review Act of 6 NY CRR 617.5 that the project is a Type 2 action and does not require further review of potential impacts pursuant to this act. And whereas the action is a minor project pursuant to 6 NY CRR 645-5.3 and public notice has been published and distributed consistent with the regulations, and the applicant has requested a variance from 646-1.1 C11. No dock shall be constructed in the 20-foot sideline setback. The applicant has demonstrated that strict conformance with the regulations will cause unnecessary hardship due to unique and peculiar circumstances which impose substantial financial, technical, or safety burdens. and the commission finds that the project is no reasonable possibility that the applicant's property, or if no property is involved, the continuation of the applicant's business, enterprise, use, or activity will bring a reasonable return following performance with the regulation. And whereas the commission finds that the project will have no adverse impact on the health, safety, or the welfare of the public, the environment, or the resources of the park, will not alter the essential character of the area in which it is proposed, will not lead to congestion in the park, and will not have an undue visual, cultural, or audible impact on the neighborhood of the park. Now therefore be resolved, the Lake George Park Commission hereby approves the request for variance and approves the above application as proposed. So moved.
Motion seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? And hearing none of them is passed.
Thank you very much.
You're in. Thank you for being here. Okay, number 11.
So this is,
Yeah.
sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead. No, dock and mooring variance, Village of Lake George. Yep.
So this is Lake George Suites is our next one. This is an application for a variance for the placement of a boat hoist more than 40 feet from the main wall watermark. The subject hoist is supported by vertical piles that extend roughly 8 feet above the dock. This was put in without a permit. The landowner has signed an order on consent agreeing to remove this and bring the site into compliance, but in the interim is applying for a variance to retain the piles. There has been some discussion regarding reducing the height of these piles so they're not as much of a visual impact, and that's been something that's been noted by the applicant and something that I've expressed with him regarding, the commission's views in the field. So with that, I'd invite Tom Downs to talk about the application.
Morning.
Morning.
I have Matthew here also, help us out with this. We met out there a few times, and I appreciate everybody for postponing from last month to this month. I had a family emergency. So what we'd like to do is lower those piles from 8 feet down to our existing piles on the other dock is 64 inches high. So we'll lower them about 3 feet. And I got a letter from Brody, was sent over to you guys, I guess the other day. These are marina to the north. So that's what we're looking to do, if we can lower it that much. And the reason being is because if we make the boat hoist too low, if the wave actions come in, it's on a bridle, so it'll swing and move the boat. It's a pretty expensive boat, so we don't want it to move. So that's why those have to be high. And if we can get it lower, we will. We'll get it lower. But that's our goal, is to get it down to that 64 inches off the dock. So we theoretically lower that top 3 feet down.
Does that satisfy the neighbor?
So Mr. Brody didn't give a specific height that he was looking for. In the field, what the commissioners proposed, what I relayed to the applicant, was 42 inches, which is roughly the height of a typical dock post, and would be just a bit higher than most of the dock posts there. I also reached out to the manufacturer, just curious about, how high do these need to be? Are there any kind of physical limitations, technological limitations? And they pointed me to the document that's actually in the application materials, which notes that the height needs to be at least 36 inch above decking height on the dock. So according to the manufacturer, it can be as low as 36 inches above the dock. What the board was looking for was 42 inches. What the applicant is asking for is 64 inches.
I do have some pictures to show the dock I have now with the higher 64 inches to kind of give you a kind of visual. You'll have to see them.
Do we need to see them, Joe? Or are we satisfied with your?
I agree. I mean, I read the documents, and it did say 36, and what the 36 did was raise the boat up to the level of the dock, which to me, I don't know if we've had any serious wave concerns, above the level of the dock with the weight on that right now. So, I'm still kind of in favor of a 42 inch, which will still raise it up several inches above the dock level. Right. And to me, it's still a very safe situation.
Okay. Any other commissioners that were on the visit?
Well, I just would add, we did debate on the site. There was also some thought of going just 4 inches more to 46. But I think I concur with Joe that the 42, especially since I saw the documentation that shows 36 works, and that puts the boat at the dock height, I kind of think that that's where we should stick, is the 42 that we discussed.
So visually consistent with the rest of the docks.
Yeah, for reference, the application materials note that the dock is currently 1.41 feet above the mean high water mark. Just looking at the elevation of the lake, we measured it and how high. So just for, so when we're thinking about wave action or, to the concerns of the applicant, currently that deck is 1.41 feet above the mean high water mark. So you guys have a lot more boating experience than I do, so you take that for what it's worth.
Is there anybody else here that wants to speak for or against it?
If I may step in, Matt Webster with Van Dusen and Steves. We do a lot of work with our client, Lake George Suites. So one of the client's main concerns is that he has regularly witnessed 2-foot swells in that area, and they do sometimes lap up on the docks. So his goal here would be to have the bottom of the boat be 2 feet above mean high, which, looking around, I of course visited the site myself. Looking around wouldn't create necessarily any visual obstructions beyond what's currently there, and that would be about that 48-inch mark for the posts themselves, if that were to be acceptable to the commission.
I lean on you folks that were there.
Well, when we were on the site, I thought that we could go, 42 looked nice, because that was right at the height of the existing post there. But then there were some other posts that were higher on the other dock, and they didn't look that outlandish, at least to me. So I thought there was a little bit of play while we were on the site. It was just that when I read this on the 36, that it kind of locked me in that 42 made sense.
Right.
But I don't think it would be as much of a problem visually if we went up a little bit, kind of like what we said when we were on site.
Split the difference.
So currently, so putting it at 36 inches, it could lift the boat to the deck height. The deck height is 1.41 feet above mean high. They're asking for 2 feet above mean high, so that's a difference of 7 inches. So we'd be looking at the minimum 36 inch plus the 7 inch is 41 inches, and you guys asked for 42. So I think when we're crunching the numbers quickly, and forgive me if I'm wrong, maybe that could be the condition.
2-foot wave should clear the
and that would be a mean high as well, right? So which we don't see very often.
So that's 2-foot waves that you're...
If you want to trust my math, I think we're good at 42 inches. Or if you guys want to conditionally say whatever the end height is, that gives you 2 feet above mean high.
And just to add on, that
it seems like we're close.
The difference between summer elevation of water, where you're going to get those swells, and mean high is about 6 inches to 7 inches. So
7 inches.
in the summertime, you're going to see 6-inch lower water depth anyway. So you can have 6 inches of freeboard in addition to what's already been built into the commissioner's determination so far.
Which makes it 42. Is this a specialty boat of some sort?
It is, actually. There's only 6 of them out there.
What is it?
It's called the James Anthony.
How long what's the length
20, I
and
think it's
the
a
beam?
26-footer.
In the beam?
Yeah, I don't know how old it is. I have a picture.
Well, probably if it's 26 feet, it's probably got an 8-foot beam.
Something you want to protect.
Yes.
Is it a wooden boat?
It's half wood, half fiberglass. It's kind of unique.
Inboard, outboard? Or?
It's an outboard.
Outboard.
Well, what do you folks that...
Well, I think what Joe's pointing out is that we have 6 inches additional on, and with the low mean high water mark, and we're still above 2 feet with 42.
Right.
So 42 should be adequate. 42 should be adequate. We're giving them 2 feet 6 inches. Above.
Is that going to work for you?
Try.
I guess the only thing we can say, and it's probably, I'll get in trouble for this, but if it doesn't, you need to come back and tell us.
That was my question.
Doesn't mean we'll do anything about it, but you got to come back.
We want to be good neighbors. So we'll bring it down to what you guys agreed to, and if it doesn't work, we'll have to come back. I don't want to cut it because those pipes are $1,000 a piece.
Yeah.
So you move the hoist first, see if
Correct.
it works.
And we have a good relationship, so I'll come out, take a look, and if it works,
And
You won't hear-
we'll come up in this big storm and look at
We'll give you a run to vote.
I appreciated that diagram of the fetch, but then you would think that the wind would come from the north. It would come from the north and be blowing to the west. So it would, here's the lake, your way, it
Yeah.
would be coming down like that.
Yeah.
But usually,
The nor'easters would get that.
Listen, I'm from Long Island, so I'm out there sometimes, it's like small craft warnings come across that. I can't believe it, I can't believe the waves. And the next day it's frozen, it's just crazy. The waves come cut it hit us.
All right, good, thank you.
I think we propose the 42,
Okay,
send it there, and see what happens.
thank you, I appreciate it.
Can we put a condition on it that the pipes can not be cut this season? And then if it works out, they would be cut at the end of the season prior to next season?
Yes.
That's reasonable.
And again, we were trying to be conscious of not putting hydraulics in the water, that's what our fault was, is, you know, again, you thought about both docks were a problem, I didn't think both lifts were a problem either, so, you know, again, we just trying to be conscious of not putting hydraulics in the water, you know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Joe, I think we're
Okay,
satisfied.
Resolution 2024-27. Application number is DWM 24-4012. Lake George, the applicant is Lake George Suites, Tom Downs. The applicant has applied for a variance to place a boat hoist on the existing dock. The Lake George Park Commission has reviewed the application, supporting documents, comments received, and other information which appears in the record. The Lake George Park Commission has made a determination pursuant to 6 NYCRR 645-3.6 and the State Environmental Quality Review Act of 6 NYCRR 617.5 that the project is a type 2 action and does not require further review of potential impacts pursuant to this act. The action is a minor project pursuant to 6 NYCRR 645-5.3. Public notice has been published and distributed consistent with the regulations. And whereas the applicant has requested a variance from the 646-1.1 C2I, no dock shall be placed more than 40 feet from the mean low water mark. The applicant has demonstrated that strict conformance with the regulations will cause unnecessary hardship due to unique and peculiar circumstances which impose substantial financial, technical, or safety burdens. And the Lake George Park Commission finds that there is no reasonable possibility that the applicant's property, or if no property is involved, the continuation of the applicant's business, enterprise, use, or activity will bring a reasonable return following conformance with the regulations. And the Park Commission finds that the project will have no adverse impact on the health, safety, or welfare of the public, the environment, or the resources of the park, will not alter the essential character of the area in which it is proposed, will not lead to congestion in the park, will not have an undue visual or cultural audible impact on the neighborhood or the park. Now therefore, be resolved, the Lake George Park Commission hereby approves the request for a variance for above the project with the following conditions: that the applicant will lower the mechanical electrical to the height of no higher than 42 inches, and at the end of the season, if there are no differences in the conditions, that the pipes would be cut at the end of the season to that height. So moved.
Motion's made.
Second.
Seconded. My question, who will be enforcing the condition at the end of 12 months? We got a particular file for that kind of thing?
We'll keep track of it. And like Tom said, we've been emailing back and forth.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none? We're good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I think this is our final project, number 11, dock and mooring variance, Village of Lake George.
Yeah. Last but not least, we have an application from Scrimshaw Ventures, represented by Chris Migliaro. This is an existing dock complex that has received variances in the past for offshore distance from the mean high and mean low water marks. The association has 12 original lots or members, and the dock complex has been granted variances to date to allow for berthing by these 12 members. The current application is for installation of PWC lifts perpendicular to the main stem of the dock with or without a supporting pier, which would essentially exacerbate the noncompliance, basically creating an E-shaped dock where an F exists and exceeding what's allowed by our density standards, and also exceeding what would naturally be allowed by naturally berthing on a dock. Typically, that would occur perpendicular to the main stem rather than, or parallel to the main stem rather than perpendicular. So with all that said, this does require variance, and I saw Chris was here with us, so I'd invite him to talk a little bit more about the application.
Good morning.
From the point of my application, that laid out a few options that I would like to have seen. One of them being the small finger that would allow me to put personal watercraft lifts in for our community. I would just simply withdraw that altogether, so to not further exacerbate what I'm asking for in this case. I think I could have worked through the issues with just a standard permit to put in two metal skeletal lifts for personal watercrafts. Had there been enough room to put them parallel with the dock, it would have just been a standard permit issue. We don't have the room, I think. Whatever members were out there yesterday, we don't have the room to put them that way, so I'd like to put two lifts in perpendicular. For our community, we have 12 members that will just go on a community lottery system that will switch out every year who wants to put their personal watercraft in. If we can get approval for the two, that's what I'm asking for.
All right. Is there anybody here to speak to this project? Joe?
Well, we visited the site, and the first thing we saw was a violation of a mooring placed in when the permit does not have that in there. So that's the first thing. And second, it's a beautiful dock. We just reviewed this within the last year, I think, Joe, something like that. And I think the team that was there reviewed it, and we feel as though we don't want to add any more structures to that dock because it's already was an extension to what the regulations were that we passed. So at this point, they could easily tie up a PWC to the dock near the shore and with a cleat, and that would be it. And so that they could add at least one PWCs without any variances or requirements from the Park Commission. Is that right, Joe? I mean,
yeah, that was the discussion I understood. Yeah, and certainly you could add cleats to that south side and naturally, just tie them up as you normally would. It sounded like your concern was you didn't think you had either the space or the water depth for that?
No, neither of them. The watercraft you saw out there was mine, and I did have it tied off to a rope on the dock, and I had it in whatever we're permitted for, a tail mooring thing, whatever you want to call it, that's out there that I tied it to. That is on our permit. But I can't, we have members in our community that want to share the space, and there would be no way that I could justify putting one in, whether it be mine or somebody else's. One is just, there's not enough room to tie up two of those. We're just short a little bit of room. So that was the big ask, if we could put two perpendicular, that's what we're asking for.
Are these association docks?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So is the applicant the association?
Yes.
Yes, and Chris is the association president.
Okay. I remember being there. This is the one you go through the little woods and you break out into the sunshine, right? Yeah.
and the permit states that there's no docking on the north end. North side of the dock.
Right. Due to the depth of the water? Or?
No, it's just that
Beach
that's
area.
kind of a swim area and other areas.
Yeah.
So a place to permit. So the only place they have is right near the shore.
What's the status of the mooring?
What am I tied up to right now?
Is that what you were referring to? You were tying the back of the...
Well, I don't know that it's called a mooring. It's on these plans. It's what we were permitted for. They call it a tail tie or something.
It's a new term to me. Do we,
My original plans.
do we have any record?
Yeah, I don't see it on our plans. We can double check that when we get back. If it's not on the plans, it would have to be removed. It's not on the most recent permit that we issued.
But that, what if the commission finds me a violation and wants me to take it out, I'm fine with that, so I don't think that's the...
One of those items that's in the water and somebody says, well, it's here last year, so let's keep it.
I think that's why we're asking for it, would be the hardship if, whatever.
Would it be helpful if you applied for a mooring ball to be used as a retainer, or whatever word?
We talked about that on site. It would have the same effect. So now it's sort of tied up to the dock and then the mooring, and so it's sitting perpendicular to the dock. The other important thing to note is when a site is over capacity already for docks, the addition of a mooring would represent a variance, and vice versa. If there's a large mooring field and then somebody, that exceeds density requirements and somebody applies for a dock, then that requires a variance. So because the site is already over capacity, adding a mooring would also represent a variance request.
It would be difficult to financially justify a variance for the PWC since they're already over capacity, as Joe said, in my opinion.
We have 340 feet of shore. I think that was one of the corrections, 240, we have 340. There's about 20 feet of wetlands in there, and I understand you came before the commission, we had a big ask, we put this project together. Believe me, it brings me no great pleasure to be here in front of you asking again, but in all fairness, the house is on this lake, people do have room for multiple boats or multiple watercrafts. We are 12 houses, 12 lots. When we purchase these houses, it's sort of what we expect to enjoy the lake. So with the least capacity, and I feel it's a pretty good ask to go in there and to say, I didn't have a full understanding before I wanted to drive up on the lift, but that adds more square footage and, be all that. A metal skeletal lift cable that has no hydraulics, no effects to the shadowing of the fish or anything like that. The only ask I need to do is I cannot put them sideways, and I cannot only put one watercraft for a 12-house, 12-lot community. So I'm asking for 2 metal lifts that we can put in there perpendicular. It will have no impact whatsoever.
But you have 12 boats, right? 12 houses, 12 boats.
Yes, sir.
So the theoretical approach in the beginning of that development, every house gets a boat. And that's what you have.
Yes.
For clarity on the shoreline, I believe this Commission's definition of lakefront, which governs dock density, excludes wetlands. Based on the APA map that was most recently authorized for the dredging project, there are 240 feet of lakefront exclusive of wetlands. That's where the 240 feet comes from. I'm not sure if the agency, considers that whole lakefront, wetland. I know we've got other situations in the basin where, like Harris Bay, where they consider the whole thing lakefront, or wetlands rather, despite, it being filled. But in this case, the lakefront does appear to be 240, which is what governs the dock density. And as far as the number of sites, houses, there were 12 original lots. There's 10 houses. 2 of the sites have essentially merged. So we have 10 landowners, 12 slips.
How about anybody else that was there? Have a thought?
Would you have a sense that this sets a precedent by expanding beyond where you normally would be comfortable going?
Certainly. So even if this didn't involve a dock that already had a variance, bringing in PWC lifts or any type of boat lift and putting it perpendicular to the dock would be something we would bring to this board, because it's not something that the dock naturally supports, and it effectively changes the shape and the berthing capacity considered by that dock and the regulations. To my knowledge, maybe Molly remembers one. I can't remember us authorizing one perpendicular to the docks, and certainly being in the variance situation, that seems unique to me in our history.
Chairman, we also brought up the fact that if we had the perpendicular docks there, that if you weren't going to use PWCs in the future, they would just be regular boat docks.
Surprise.
So And then we would have now 14. So, I mean, that would be something that we wouldn't have any control over at the time.
Do you have any alternative suggestions / requests?
I wish you had an alternative for me, because we'd like to drive our personal watercraft, as silly as that, strangely as that sounds, in a way that would fit in the box here. I withdrew putting the extra finger on there. From my perspective, representing my members, something that we like to enjoy and do. We'll certainly respect your decision. It sounds like I'm getting raked through the coals here, but, I wish, I wanted to originally drive them up on the plastic ramps, and then I was educated and told that they count as square footage, and then you get into shape, and then you get into the fish shadowing and everything like that. So I figured that the least invasive and the most respectful ask would be to get the metal skeletal lifts to allow 2 between our whole community, so we can circulate and have a community lottery system and enjoy them that way. I thought that was pretty reasonable, and that's why we're here.
Are the two lots that have 2 slips each, or the members that represent 2 members essentially, are those slips open? Are they vacant, or are they used?
So, good question, and I don't know why all roads always point to me, but that's mine. But for your information, I, just like the other lot owner who bought his lot and decided to put a pool on it, is irrelevant. My lot, I paid $115,000 for those rights. When I assumed that I bought the place, I assumed that I bought those rights. And yes, I have a boat and my son has a boat.
Okay.
So all 12 slips are full.
Okay.
Per the lots, and that's appropriate.
Yeah.
It's with the original development plans. So is there any kind of solution here if I want to put my PWC or 2?
What if that buoy was actually part of what the applicant is saying, part of his plan? Then if that's the case, and you go back through your records, Joe, then in essence, he could keep what he has there, and you would still be able to put not a lift, but bring another PWC parallel to the dock, and put it and use the cleat and put it on the cleats on the dock.
That is possible, and I'm not an experienced rider. I'm a new personal watercraft rider, but I didn't want to leave it in the water. That's why I wanted to lift. I thought it was bad to leave these things in the water. That's why I wanted to lift, take it out of the water.
They're
Do I want to
fiberglass.
drive it over to $1 Million Beach and hike it out every time?
No.
Not part of our problem. I guess our problem is that we try to avoid precedences at all costs, because there's a guy behind you.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah. And that's what makes it difficult for us, and that we don't just understand.
My unique and peculiar situation is that I can't just apply for a permit to put 2 side by side. I don't have the room, and I would not dare think of myself among others in my community. So it's a winner take all thing where I would just pull it and lose it. I wouldn't do that. I couldn't do it.
Right. I don't know.
On the mooring front, I'm only going back to 2019.
I'm trying to avoid a vote, because I don't think you're going to get a yes vote. And I'm trying to determine whether it's worth delaying it for another month for, maybe I'm just reaching for the stars here. Yeah. I don't want to say no and kick you out and say, tough luck, I'm sorry you spent 20 grand on a PWC or 2, and hope you can sell them.
Right.
That's not fair.
You can still put one.
You can still put 1 in there right now.
Oh.
Yeah, you can always have 1 there.
That satisfies my conscience.
So your recommendation is to put 1 out of a 12-lot community?
Right, and you use a model for every weekend. So you got 1 weekend a month, you can put your PWC.
That's not our idea of what we pay for over there.
Yes, currently the site's not authorized for a mooring, and I can go back to the file review records, at least in 2019, and there wasn't a mooring at that time, and they're not built.
We can circle back on the plans, and I can show you what was approved on there. And I don't know where the miscommunication, because we did have Mark Fisher from Graves Lane, the engineering company, that put all this together. There was one on 1 and one on 12 that I have. They're called, I don't have them in front of me, but they're called tail ties or whatever they're called. It wasn't.
You're authorized for some posts to go in, right?
It was separate from that.
Okay.
Just for instance, if that mooring buoy was allowed, couldn't they tie kind of on a diagonal back to the same two PWCs?
In theory.
To one. Well, we were on the site. I mean, we saw how much space there was. I was looking at it and thinking the same thing, but then it immediately came up that the mooring wasn't allowed. And so I lost that train of thought while we were on site. But I remember thinking, with that buoy, you
That
could
could be
easily...
investigated by the applicant.
You could put in another cleat on the dock. That's the only thing you'd need, because there was nothing in the shore end, and it seemed like there was enough water depth to me that you could do two of them like that, if that was allowed. I don't...
If that's, the direction that the commission wants me to go down, or can possibly go down, it's not the dream, but,
It'll work.
It'll work.
But I think the first thing is that you're going to have to get with Joe to verify exactly what was permitted.
Yeah.
Drawings.
Yeah, that's a concern.
And then that's a different issue as to whether or not, if the mooring is not part of it, as to whether or not we would approve that as an ad. Because that's quite a bit different than putting in lifts in or putting a structure in. That's...
I would suggest we table this and let them figure out.
I think so too.
Is that appropriate, Counselor, to table the
I was going to
application?
suggest table it.
So we can explore some more options and get to the bottom of the mooring issue and all that.
Absolutely.
And this way you preserve your ability to talk about it instead of going away mad at us.
It brings no great pleasure to be in front of you again on this.
We're sorry. The tough part is you just see how exciting the Park Commission meetings are. I mean, really, we should supply pillows.
Whoever visited the site, my wife was there, and I know you had some nice things to say about the project, the dock. It was a lot of work.
The good news is it's happened a couple times today, and it's happened many times in my 18 years or whatever, is that the applicant got good help. Molly started that kind of thing from the staff.
Your name on the paperwork. Our rap sheet is
Keep the status quo as it is until the end of the...
I personally am interested in our disagreement per se of whether the mooring was something that was approved or just my neighbor put it in and nobody ever caught us kind of words. Okay, you can work that out with Joe, and why don't we table it?
And then we just leave everything the way it is right now until, if anything changes by the end of July meeting.
And Joe, because he's the first applicant for next month, wouldn't that put him at the top of the list?
Theoretically.
So you could get in? I'm trying to help you here, So, you're tabled.
Okay.
No ups, no downs. And figure out how to use your PWC for the next 30 days. Thank you. Okay. Chairman Lombard, do we have a
Well, we do, and I don't want to be redundant and repeat everything that our lieutenant said earlier when he gave his report on the Marine Patrol, but we have a lot going down, and one of the things I was very impressed with is Joe did give a synopsis on his 12 officers, and they come from amazing various backgrounds, from a retired officer from Manhattan who worked in counterterrorism to teachers, and the other The original, I hope I'm getting this right, Marine Patrol officers have a total of 162 years that they've worked for the Lake George Park Commission. And like Joe said, they will come anytime, day or night, if something is going down on the lake. So we have some new equipment. Power steering was added to one of our 24-foot whalers, and this was the only boat we had without power steering, and we will get reimbursed 50% from New York State Parks and Rec. And the Lake George Park Commission has also started providing mechanical services to the Warren County Sheriff's for their equipment. And one of the things that you should know is that the Park Commission, Marine Patrol, and the Warren County Sheriffs have worked incredibly well together over the years, and they provide training for both sides. And another thing is we need to get docks at Green Island, and the DEC has assisted. We've worked with the DEC on that, and of course Joe talked about the gasoline issue. It's tough to get non-ethanol, 90% octane, but we are doing well on everything, and make sure that you understand that $50,000 is needed to run the boats for the season, and all the fuel is put into the boats at the Green Island in Bolton Landing. So Joe talked about the boater safety class. There's a waiting list. It's been very successful, and I think that's about it. Did I leave anything out?
Doesn't sound like it, except for reading the resolution.
All right, so the resolution 2024-29, whereas the Law Enforcement Committee met on June 25th, 2024 to review matters pertaining to the Lake George Park Commission's Marine Patrol and the Commission's law enforcement program, and whereas active law enforcement cases and their status were reviewed in executive session, and whereas the Law Enforcement Committee has reported on the results of that committee meeting at this full commission meeting, and whereas the Law Enforcement Committee recommends acceptance of this month's law enforcement report, now therefore be it resolved that the commission accepts the report of the Law Enforcement Committee. Do I have a vote here?
Is that a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion?
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion on that report? Hearing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none. It's accepted. Thank you. And our final item for today is public comments. Is there anybody here that wants to make some public comments? If you do, just step right up to the mic. You can tell us who you are and where you're from and what your subject matter is.
First of all, my name's Heidi Taflin. My family have had a property on Cleverdale or along Harris Bay since the 1930s, and so I just want to say how much I admire, my husband and I both admire the work that you all do. I know it's a tough job. You've been shouldering a heavy burden lately with all these big decisions, and we appreciate your commitment to serving in this role to protect the lake. And I am just going to ask that you reconsider continuing to make an effort to control or at least hold down the proliferation of milfoil in Harris Bay. That yacht club at the end of our bay, 270-something slips. Some of those, I don't know if you ever walk around the docks there or not. In fact, some of you may have a boat there, but they are, some of them, ocean liner style mini yachts. Their hulls are deep. They drag along that channel every day, in and out, in and out. And what they're doing is they are feeding milfoil every day into the rest of the lake. So if you had a sewer pipe at the end of Harris Bay that was pouring sewer into the lake, and you were just going up and controlling the sewer issues in the little bays up north, but not attacking the source of the problem, you wouldn't have any eventual luck. And I feel very strongly that it's the same situation. I know it's hard, I know it's expensive, I know it's tremendously complex, and we see every year it used to just be around the channel or down at the end of the bay. Now it's all around the islands. We see it up north when we go to the islands up there. We know it's terrible. We know it's expensive. And I just wanted to take a moment to ask you all to reconsider and see if there isn't a way that you could at least try to mitigate the channel through every season so that it'll have a positive impact on the entire lake with any luck. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say, and it was entertaining this morning, so I feel for you having to do this every month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Ms. Eplin, I can meet with you after the meeting too, or we can talk a little bit more about Harris Bay.
I'm sorry?
I can meet with you a little bit after the meeting, we can talk a little bit about Harris Bay.
Thank you.
Next, anybody else?
I'll also very briefly talk about our problem day Harris Bay, but it related to the channel. We would love to see more frequent patrols in our bay, because I am, like my husband, a teacher. I'd love to hang up my teacher voice for the summer and not have to scream at people to slow down, that we're in a no-wake zone. People come in and out from the gas docks. Some of them are they dock their boats there, but plenty of people come into Harris Bay to get gas at the Harris Bay Yacht Club and then gun it flying out. They're in a big hurry to enjoy the lake. We are happy for them to enjoy the lake, but they come in way too fast, way too frequently. To have an air horn on my dock and have to be a Karen, I don't want. We would love to see more of you. So that's all. Yeah. Speaking to the helpfulness, my husband was very stressed about this whole process, and you were very, very helpful. There are answers, and I really appreciate that. I know I told you that already, but thanks.
Don't do that, he'll be hard to live with. Anybody else? Hearing none?
Move to adjourn.
The chair has the power to accept the motion, and made and done and carried, and 16 after 12. Thank you.